Hello, my name is Phil Easter, historian and writer from Baltimore, Maryland, also known as the Amazing Memory Man. We're recording tonight on Monday, May 6, 2024. My story tonight is about the first person who ever ran 1 mile in under 4 minutes. For a long time, many great track runners came close to the 4-minute barrier in the 1930s and 40s, and no one could break 4 minutes until exactly 70 years ago today. On May 6, 1954, a 25-year-old English medical student by the name of Roger Bannister achieved that remarkable feat. Roger Bannister was born in Harrow, England on March 23, 1929. As a schoolboy in the 1940s, he started to run. He enjoyed running very much, and even around ages 12, 13, and 14, he was the best cross-country runner at his school. And then later in the 1940s, he entered St. Mary's College at Oxford University. He wanted to become a doctor. In the 1948 Olympics were held in London, and Bannister was fascinated by how good some of these runners were. He was pretty good then himself, but not yet good enough to make the British Olympic team. But he did 4 years later in Helsinki, 1952. He represented Great Britain in the 1,500-meter run in Helsinki. The 1,500 meters is a little short of a mile, but whenever there were very good runners in college or other track meets who liked to run the 1 mile, in some international competitions, the distance was 1,500 meters, a little short of a mile. But Bannister was disappointed in finishing 4th place. He just missed a medal. As you know, in the Olympics, the top 3 get gold, silver, and bronze medals. But he was still proud to be in the Olympic Games. But he was determined to become the first person to ever run a mile under 4 minutes. So the next 2 years, he was training a lot harder. And he knew of a man from Australia named John Landy, who also wanted to become the first person to run a mile in under 4 minutes. On May 6, 1954, he started a residency at St. Mary's Hospital in London a short time before that. So on that day, he worked a full shift and then took a train from London to Oxford. The day was very rainy earlier in the day and very windy. But just around 6 p.m., the wind had died down. The race was scheduled for 6:10 p.m., where 3 runners from Oxford would face 3 runners from another college. The other 2 runners at Oxford were good friends of Roger Bannister, Chris Brasher and Chris Chataway. The 3 had often trained together, and Chataway and Brasher would be helping, in a sense, Bannister. He had to push him to try to run his very fastest, the way they did it back then sometimes. They worked as a team. One of the other runners would set a pace, and then at the end of 3 laps, however, the time was exactly 3 minutes for 3/4 of a mile, and the crowd of about 1,100 people were very excited. They realized that if Bannister could run the final quarter, even in a fraction of a second under 1 minute, that would be under 4 minutes for the mile, and history would be made that day. His parents were in the stands, by the way, to see this historic moment. And indeed, he came around the final turn, ran as hard as he could, despite feeling pain in his chest. He crossed the finish line, and the officials scrambled, looked at their watches, and an announcement came a few minutes later on the loudspeaker. And the man who made the announcement was trying to say 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. But as soon as it said 3, the crowd went wild. They knew 4 minutes had been broken, even just by 0.6 of 1 second. Roger Bannister made history. Around the world the next day, many newspapers told his story. He made headlines on the front page of many newspapers, not just the sports page, but even front page news, at a time when Many major events were happening in the world, and of course there was tension even then between the United States and the Soviet Union during that era called the Cold War. But this was such a remarkable achievement, really in science as well as sports. Not just one of the greatest events in sports history, but you see, for many years, doctors and scientists felt that the human body, no matter how well an athlete trained, just could not run 1 mile under 4 minutes. So it was truly a remarkable achievement that happened exactly 7 decades ago in Oxford, England. 25-year-old Roger Bannister became world famous overnight. Well, he ran another big race later that year. Actually, it was a major championship called the British Empire Games. It's held every 4 years. And now, in more recent years, they changed the name to the Commonwealth Games. But it's held every 4 years, like the Olympics are held every 4 years, but in the other even-numbered year. So in other words, like the 52 Olympics were a leap year in 1952, the Empire Games were in 1954, and then 58 the next time. So in that race, Bannister met John Landy. I should have mentioned that only 6 weeks after Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, becoming the first to do it, John Landy of Australia became the second man to do it, and his time was a little faster than Bannister. His time was 3 minutes and 58 seconds, so he had the new world record. So on August 7th, 1954, in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, during the Empire Games, the 1 mile race was the featured attraction for sure. You had several runners, but including the 2 men who had broken 4 minutes, now running against each other. Well, sometimes the build-up, the hype to a major sports event, like a boxing match or sometimes the Super Bowl in American football, doesn't always live up to the hype, does it? Sometimes one competitor does so much better than the other, it's not really close. But this time, the race lived up to its billing. John Landy and Roger Bannister both broke 4 minutes in the same race, Bannister winning. So it's the second time they each broke 4 minutes, this time, but it was for a championship, and Roger Bannister retired from competition with a gold medal in the British Empire Games, a great achievement. That track meet was long considered the second most important in the world, second only to the Olympic Games. So at least he won a gold medal in a major competition. And then he retired from competition and concentrated on his medical studies. He became a doctor of neurology for many years, and he was considered one of the best neurologists England ever had. In 1975, he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II, and thus known after that as Sir Roger Bannister. He died on March 3rd, 2018, just a few weeks short of his 89th birthday. But what a wonderful life to have been the first runner to ever break 4 minutes in the mile, and then went on to a great medical career as a doctor, helping many people. This is Phil Easter, the Amazing Memory Man. We'll see you next time, another story on another subject. Thank you, and good night.